my darlings, I'm having such a happy day. First of all, because my lovely son Oliver is here, and his hair is very big because of lockdown, but it's very spongy, and he's loving being home with his mum. The other thing I wanted to share is that, and I'm not showing off, but I've just done this lovely interview for Natural Solutions for ADHD Summit with lovely Joanna, who organised all of this to help parents of children with ADHD. So I promised them a video just to talk through what I said on my interview. So anyway, I'm going to get on with it because I'm just itching. Look at that lovely hair. You just want to touch it. Anyhow, here we go. So if you've got a child who, you know, is racing around in their head, and I've heard this from a lot of people who have ADHD, that sometimes it's like standing and watching rows of traffic zooming towards you. You're so up in your head and you need to be brought down. So one thing I discussed with Joanna was how to bring energy down. And when I work, I like to share with family groups that I work with how to do it for each other, but also, and this is really important, for a child to be able to do what I share with you on themselves. The reason being, it puts them in charge of their own healing. It helps them become aware of when things are building and getting too much, which then leads to self-regulation and self-management. Don't you just love it? And it's all natural. So off we go. This is how you ground somebody. So first of all, even just by putting your hands on their shoulders, literally just like this, that's all you have to do. By the time you count to 40, the body is flooding with oxytocin, the hormone of love and nurture that babies who are breastfeeding are filled with. So the person feels calm and held. If somebody's really up there and really angry, the other thing you can do is, if you know, because sometimes you can feel contained if somebody's on your shoulders, so you can bring the energy down like this. And what I very often do, I'll breathe very deeply and mindfully, and I'll start to do it. I just breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth. And as I do it, I work on my arms and my fingers like this. And it's always downwards because it helps to bring the energy down. And then the child will either begin to mirror me, or it lets somehow the energy in the room drop so that you're then able to do it for them. So if I wanted to calm Ollie down, he does get excited seeing his mum, I would do it like this. Look at his cheerful face. See, he loves it. All right, Ollie? Are you enjoying your trip home? Look at your beard. Anyway, so this is how you go. Like this. Oh, and in the middle of your hand there, if you cup your hand, the deepest point, don't forget, is a pressure point where if you just massage it with your thumb, you're working on the gut, the second brain, where those big build-ups of frustration begin. So, and meltdowns, fear, anxiety, all the stuff we don't process, it all relates. So when you work there, you're actually naturally reducing your stress and anxiety levels as well. That's a little extra, because I didn't talk about that in the interview. Then you go down the legs. Because my son is 6'4", I'm going to speed it up a bit, because we'll be there forever. There we go. And when you get to the feet, make sure you really press them on the ground. And do it quite firmly, because one thing I've learned in my work is that people with ADHD really prefer a firm touch. If they're crying, you're doing it too hard. You don't want to make them scream in agony, but you know, grip them like a falcon. But it's firm, because they want to feel pulled into their bodies. They need to come out of that busy space in their heads and back into their bodies, because it really is full of chatter, full of busyness, and you just want to bring them back. So that's a really lovely one you can do. And while we're at it, I'm just going to have a small rant. It really makes me cross when people say that kids with ADD, ADHD, executive brain function, are behavioural. It is not. Their brains do not make enough dopamine. You know, it's a bit like zooming up to someone in a wheelchair and shouting at them because they're not going to run and do a 1,500-meter sprint. Just because it's not a visible disability, I hate that word, doesn't mean, you know, it's not there. It's absolutely the way the brain is wired. And actually from that differentness, once you find what a child is really passionate about, by working like this, bringing them into their bodies, working with them, not on them, putting them in charge of their feelings, teaching them self-awareness, how to be on top of their own healing and their own feelings, you can grow the gift, you can grow that full potential. Because if you look after the emotional and social intelligence, the cognitive intelligence will reach the optimum, which means good grades. Everybody's happy. Right, let's get on with some massage. So, the shoulders. The other thing you can do, and I've shared this before, is you can roll the skin over the shoulders. Even if you've only got little shoulders like me, so long as you've got movement on the skin, even if you've got a little bunch of clothes there, it doesn't matter. So long as you've got some movement on the skin, you are doing good. You are doing a lot of good. And then you can do it back like this. Like whizzing about on a little chopper bike with handlebars, pulling it back into the heel of your hand. And I use my whole body. So you lean back into it. And it's very gentle, very mindful. And with the shoulders, because the shoulders carry our load, it's in our language, the weight of the world on your shoulders, you always work from either side of the neck and off, because you want to get rid of the load. You don't want to push it in. And then the other one you can do is that squeezy lifty one, which I've talked about in a previous video. All my videos can be found on YouTube. There we go. And that is beautifully grounding. The next thing I'm going to show you, which I talked about in the interview, are the temples, because the temples make and store 3 of the main happy hormones and stores the 4th. So when you work on the temples, and again you can do this on yourself, so you can either do it with your palms like this backwards and forwards, or you can do it with your fingers. And I always go backwards and forwards because you want to give it a really good firing up, because in your temples is the capital city for oxytocin, love and nurture, serotonin, you're all going to be sick of this, aren't you? Happiness, self-esteem, confidence, endorphins, which we all love, pain relief, but the most important one, dopamine. This is where it is. So it's made in different parts of the brain, but it's stored in the hypothalamus, deep in the brain, and travels up where it's stored in the pituitary. So you've got dopamine there as well, which is key for kids with ADHD. So if you give this a good massage, what you're actually doing is stimulating all of the happy hormones and coping chemicals, but in particular, you're getting onto that dopamine. You have to find it, just get it going, zooming around the body, and you watch what happens. So there's that one. If you make enough serotonin, the hormone of happiness, you then have enough spare to make melatonin, which helps with sleep. And again, kids with ADHD, they're born with higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, enemy of the body, not enough dopamine, but they also don't make enough melatonin. So again, this is all about how the brain is wired. They're not mechanisms to be put right, these children. They are people to be understood. And if your brain is wired differently, that very often comes with superpowers. So when you work on the temples and get all these things flowing, superpowers arrive. I promise, I've seen it. So melatonin, how are we going to get that working? So we want to make a little bit of extra serotonin. So what I explained in the video is if you do it for someone, you just tilt their head like this, and with your 3 middle fingers, you're working across the forehead from temple to temple. The reason being, on the temples, you're zooming up, firing up the 4 happy hormones, including dopamine and serotonin, which is obviously going to help make the melatonin. Loads of tonins going on. But when you get to the middle here, this is the pineal here, and you can also get to it there. And the reason this is so magical, but scientific, is because it is where melatonin is stored. So when you work there, melatonin governs sleep. We all love that. And our kids don't get enough of that because that's a big problem. Sleep, mood, and aggression levels. So if somebody's feeling a bit grumpy and tired because they haven't slept, spend ages on it. There we go. You can even go up like this. I've shown you this before on one of my other videos. You can go up like this to just before the crown, because here you've got still points. And it does what it says on the tin. Brings the body to stillness. And what else do I need to talk about in the interview? That was it. On the neck, behind the neck. So this one you can do on yourself. The kids can do this one on themselves. They could put their elbows on a desk at school if they're beginning to feel stressed and do this. So you're teaching them to be in touch with their feelings, to control, you know, when they feel everything's on an overload. If you teach them these things, it empowers them. You're not just another adult doing things to them. So do it as a family, do it, help the kids have these tools to take to school with them that they can just do, and it's very discreet, you can easily do it. Nobody would tell you off for doing that, just having your elbows on the desk. So the other one is, if you push your fingers up your neck, where the bottom of the head joins onto the neck, it's called the occipital ridge. It's just where your head joins onto your neck. And underneath that are all those lovely little dips. They're really gorgeous, actually. And if you massage those, particularly either side of the neck, you're directly on the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve pushes dopamine through the body. And not only that, it lowers heart rate and blood pressure. So you're flooding them with this motivation, productivity, attention, focus, all of those things that are so difficult for kids with ADHD because they don't produce enough dopamine and not because they're naughty. So you're boosting all of that, but because you're on the vagus nerve, you're keeping the body in that state of rest and relax. How magical is that? So you can either do it on yourself like this, and again, the kids can just put you're enjoying this, aren't you, Ollie? They can just put their elbows on the desk and do it like this for themselves. A good time to do it is before bed at night as well, because all along that occipital ridge, you've got more still points. Bring them to stillness. They'll dream and sleep like babies. It's okay, Ollie. And now I'm going to do it to you. Okay? So you tip the head forwards, middle finger pressure, and you're just going underneath that ridge, all the way out to it feels like a little hard bit behind your ear, which is actually a sinus point. So if somebody's a bit bunged up, you give that a little rub as well. Not their nose, the hard bit behind their ear. Stop laughing, Ollie. It's supposed to be very serious, you know. Right, and then you do the other side. Honestly, can't understand where you get your bad behaviour from. It's a shocker. Out to that bony point, and you're rotating and lifting at the same time, and it's so easy. And to share this on a family and friends basis, you can't do any harm. The only time you don't do this one is if somebody's got low blood pressure, because you're obviously lowering the blood pressure. If you've got somebody who's pregnant, or you know, a child with ADHD who happens to have low blood pressure, don't do that one. Just do the one on the head here, because that will bring the body to stillness, but you're not on the vagus nerve. So I hope that all makes sense. And I think I covered everything from the interview. The interviews are being aired the week of the 13th of July. And I'm on the 13th and the 16th, I think. I'll put it on my social media anyway. But this is a very special video all about that for all you lovely parents of kids with ADHD. And don't let other people define your children. You know, it's lovely to have professional advice, but actually there's nothing like walking the journey from the inside out. And the amount of times I've had parents actually cry because I've explained to them that their child isn't naughty. Just that dopamine, that melatonin, get that going, and I promise you, you will start to see a difference, because every child deserves to be nurtured. No child deserves those continual messages of exclusion, particularly if it's only because of how their brain is wired. So I've had my little rant, and I shall see you soon. And I really hope you enjoy the interviews from all the 5 speakers. So I'm going to be learning loads too. I love it. And that will be in July. And I'll put the information out on my social media nearer the time. And thank you very much for listening.